you feel like they're doing?
I think this person wrote about the character's motivations. So at the end, at the last sentence, it says, I'm trying to find me. Mr. Tillian is caring because he cares about Harry and his parrot. My character really wants more company from his son, and that strikes me as 11. And that strikes me as a character motivation. Like what? I guess they didn't elaborate on that motivation, so I don't know if that's a 3 or a 4. But that would be what the motivation is. Like, I think when we read the level 4 in here, it's like, got a parrot because feels lonely, and so like that's talking about it, but I don't know if that's,
I think it's level 4 in the fact that he wrote about how the character is complicated. Like he said, lonely and caring. Those are 2 different traits, and they're not similar. Like, I think caring and kind might have been like 1, but he is lonely and he is very caring. So I think that is kind of like a level 4, that first box. I wrote about how the character is complicated.
I think she's not yet doing the supporting thinking with text evidence chunk of level 4 because she doesn't really explain that well that he's lonely or that he's caring. She kind of like tries to get at it, especially with lonely. He's lonely. The part about the Harry not coming by much, I can see what she means there, that he's lonely because his son doesn't come by, but she didn't really explain it. And the caring, she says he's caring because he cares about Harry. You know, like, what do you mean by that? Like, you can't just say he's caring because he cares.
Right.
So, like, more evidence for
to
each
show
piece of
how
it.
he cares.
Yeah.
So would you say that's a 2 or a 3?
3.
Because according to 3 criteria, you need evidence too. So.
She does have evidence.
Yeah, and she did have details from the text. So maybe it's like mostly these for this part, and then and then this for this part.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't mention a small action.
Oh yeah, I would have
That's why I
liked
was
to see her
confused.
mentioning like that he buys the parrot.
Yeah, like or like he's caring because he doesn't nag Harry to come visit him.
Yeah.
Or he's caring because he always keeps his sweet shop open, and it's always open every time Harry comes by after school, or he like always gives sweets to his friend. I felt like there were like a lot of small actions, and none of them were made. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah. So I think it would be like she gets this one and this one, and not this one and this one. So like if we were gonna try to give her an overall, it would be kind of like a 3.5-ish.
I mean, I think I agree with you there, but I guess I was just sorry. This is our first time I'm asking any question.
Totally.
So it says when a character makes a big decision, I could use what happened earlier in the character's traits to tell why the character made the big decision. And his big decision was getting a parrot, and she doesn't address why he did that. So I wouldn't give her the check there.
Totally.
For 3. She does. I'd give her a check in 2 for that. The main character faces a problem and solves it. Wrote about how the character does that.
Did she do that?
Kind of not really. She mentioned the parrot. She sort of just eschewed that last.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like a growth area for her would be thinking about the problem.
Also, if we go back to the question though, what kind of person is Mr. Tillian? Like, I don't think that necessarily means you need to go into like the motivation. I don't know. Like, if I was to answer that question, like I don't know if I would go into like, well, his motivation is that's not answering the question about what kind of person he is.
Right.
Right.
And Lucy says that in that document too. I think it's in that one that for a kid to be doing great character thinking, you can't expect that it's going to include like all 7 facets of like good character thinking. So that like a great response will not sometimes have all of it. I think that is good information for me to know though, that in her thinking she's not. It doesn't seem like she's thinking much about the problem or small actions, you know, so I would want to record that, but she could still be like a 3.5 or a 3.25.
I just guess in answering the question, like you could be like, well, because he solved his problem, like that would be connecting it, but I don't think saying, well, he had a problem and this was the problem, this is how he solved it. Like I guess like those 3 bullet points we just talked about, the ones we don't really think she checks, Sarah checks like the problem facing it. Like I could see how they could tie that in to answer the question, but I don't think just because they didn't bring that up specifically, I don't think that means they didn't answer the question thoroughly.
Yeah.
Because this question wasn't like, what's the theme, or like what's the, you know, what's the problem, or what did the characters learn from the problem? I don't know.
Just a little build on that, like almost like in the written responses, like when we assume like SBAC and like having students, like when they write a response, it has to be like clear to the reader that like almost as if we never read the text. Like if they can make a logical argument, we're gonna need background information about the character. Like we're gonna need to know like a little bit of the plot to like in order to come up with a claim and back it up. So I kind of see why they're asking the writer to really like own in on like the why for the character trait.
Oh, I agree. I think you have to say the why. Like why? How is he lonely? How is he caring? But I don't necessarily think that means you have to go into the problem and the solution. You could just use examples from the text that necessarily. You could say, oh, he's lonely, and I know this because he gets a parrot to, you know, because he's lonely and his son doesn't come. I'm not necessarily saying this is the problem or this is the solution, or like, I don't know. I think you can touch on it for sure. I just don't think it needs to be explicitly like this is the problem and this is the solution to answer this specific question. It's also a super big question.
Yeah, I think if we look at the sample responses, it's like it's clear that the student is not a 2, and if you look at the difference between a 3 and a 4, I feel like she's definitely in between those 2 types of responses that are shown here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point though, the like you would want someone to be able to understand what she's saying without having read it, but I think with the limited amount of space we give them here, it would be like too tough to like give a little bit of context of the story and your thinking. But I think that's good to keep in mind when we do like literary essays and we do more of that writing that's more comprehensive, that we do want to be like beefing that up more at the idea that someone could understand.
But building up Brit, like I'm just curious, are these questions in the way that Lucy Calkins grades them aligned with the SBAC? And if they are, that's great. If they're not, should we be pushing them a little further, or I guess, you know, addressing the gaps, whether or not it's further or less, you know, whatever. But
I think because
I don't really know much about SBAC writing expectations.
They drew from a bunch of resources when they were developing it, and they looked at the standards and at Park and SBAC, so it's informed somewhat by that. And I think it's pretty early in the year to really change the expectation, or to try to beef it up. I think this is a really good tool for now. Okay. And then literary essays will really help kids like reach towards that level of that the SBAC expects. And then we could also do like a mini 2-week unit on like the exact things your response should have in it for SBAC. But I don't think kids need to be doing that all year necessarily.
Okay. I think it might be hard in 2 weeks though to like really implement those thorough skills. Because that level like that you mentioned, that's intense. Like to be able to read a response, I don't know. It's just like I hadn't thought that.
We'll have to think about where our kids end up too. Like if a lot of them are in like the 2-3 range, we'll want to get them up to a 4 before we can shoot for that.